There is a movement of young men who have decided that the most rational response to the world as it actually operates is to optimize their face. Not their character, not their relationships, not their capacity for meaning or connection. Their face. The bone structure beneath it, the symmetry of it, the hormonal and pharmaceutical and sometimes physical interventions required to make it more of what the world rewards and less of what it currently is. Most people hear about this movement and immediately locate the problem in the people inside it. The bone smashing, the peptide stacks, the methamphetamine for appetite suppression, the likely infertility. These are described as the symptoms of something broken in the individual. What almost nobody asks is the more interesting question. Not what is wrong with the Looksmaxxer, but what kind of world produces a person for whom this is the rational conclusion. Part 1. The Halo Effect. The halo effect is one of the most extensively replicated findings in social psychology. Attractive people are hired more frequently, paid more, convicted less often, assumed to be more intelligent, and treated with more patience and generosity in everyday interactions. The research is not ambiguous. Physical attractiveness functions as a social currency that compounds across every domain of life in ways that are largely invisible to the people benefiting from it and acutely visible to the people who aren't. Clavicular, the content creator at the center of the Looksmaxxing movement, describes this with a precision that the mainstream conversation consistently fails to engage with honestly. He argues that character, personality, intelligence, maturity are perceived entirely differently based on your physical appearance. That the halo effect is not a quirk at the margins of social life, but a master variable operating across every interaction a person will ever have. That telling someone their looks don't matter when the data says they do is not kindness. It is, in his word, copium. When an interviewer pushes back and argues that character matters more than appearance, Clavicular's response is worth sitting with. "You're absolutely correct," he says. "You're just forgetting that key piece of nuance. Those qualities are perceived entirely differently once you factor in how you look." The argument is not that character doesn't matter. The argument is that character is processed through the filter of physical appearance before it ever gets evaluated on its own terms. And that filter is not something the individual controls. Part 2. The society that produced this. To understand the Looksmaxxer, you have to understand the environment that made Looksmaxxing the logical conclusion. A generation of young men who came of age inside social media, a technology that quantifies human attractiveness in real time, that makes the hierarchy of appearance visible and measurable and constantly present in a way no previous generation had to navigate. A dating market that has shifted so dramatically toward visual selection that the average man's romantic prospects have narrowed to a fraction of what they were for previous generations. A culture that simultaneously tells men that appearance doesn't matter and organizes every incentive structure around the reality that it does. Clavicular identifies something real when he says that Looksmaxxing was the missing piece, the thing the manosphere had not addressed. Because the manosphere told men to get rich, get strong, get confident. And Clavicular watched men do all of those things and still find themselves at the bottom of a hierarchy organized primarily around something they had not been given permission to optimize: the face. The thing nobody was supposed to talk about, because talking about it honestly meant acknowledging that the playing field was not level, and that effort and character alone were not sufficient to overcome a significant genetic disadvantage in a world that processes everything through appearance first. The Looksmaxxer is not a person who failed to develop the right values. He is a person who looked at the actual operating system of the society he was born into and drew a conclusion that the data supports. Part 3. The Rational Actor. What Looksmaxxing represents psychologically is the behavior of someone who has refused to accept a comfortable lie about how the world works in exchange for a painful truth about what it actually requires. That refusal is not pathology. It is a particular kind of clarity, the clarity of someone who has decided that understanding the real rules of the game is more useful than pretending the rules are what we say they are in public. Clavicular describes himself as a sheltered person who prefers time alone. The social performance of his content, the clubbing, the IRL streams, the constant public presence, is something he does because he is a content creator, not because it reflects who he actually is. What he actually is, beneath the persona, is someone who took a hard look at the world and decided to respond to it with maximum rationality rather than comfortable self-deception. The interventions he uses, the hormones, the peptides, the dietary discipline, are extreme by mainstream standards. They are not extreme by the standards of the environment he is responding to, which is one in which the difference between physical attractiveness and its absence maps directly onto the difference between a fundamentally different quality of life. The question worth sitting with is not why Clavicular made the choices he made. It is what it says about the society that made those choices rational. Final thoughts. There is a moment in Clavicular's interview that stays with you. The interviewer asks him what he thinks is more important, looking good or being kind to the people around you. And he doesn't answer. Not because he is being evasive, because inside the framework, the question does not have an obvious answer. Kindness is not a metric. It cannot be measured, ranked, or optimized. It produces no quantifiable return in the domains the framework tracks. Most people hear that moment and conclude something about Clavicular. The more unsettling reading is what it reveals about the world he is describing. A world in which kindness has no measurable return, in which character is processed through appearance before it is ever evaluated on its own terms, in which a generation of young men looked at the actual operating system of their society and concluded that their face was their most viable asset. The halo effect is real. What you do with that reality is the only question that actually matters.